Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carl Peterson, and I'm seeking the nomination of the Libertarian Party for president as its presidential candidate. I'm different from, I think, all other candidates, and that is that I see that the ever-increasing concentration of the economy has brought with it all of the things that we're complaining about and that we would try to fix if we were elected president. I think the solution is a simple solution. We've got to allow small business to prosper, and that is, we've got to allow the economy to be owned by the people in the economy rather than the major corporations. The government has, over the years, eliminated the right of small business to compete. For example, there's a statute, the Securities Act of 1933, that prohibits small business from raising capital by advertising or publicizing. You have to go to lawyers and do prospectuses and seek legal help. We ought to eliminate that. Higher education has got to be reformed in the sense of preempting the regulation. We have to stop the regulation of First Amendment rights. We have to allow people to set up schools to teach people how to work for small business so that small business can provide what it can for the public. It can provide jobs and new and improved products and services. We have to allow small business to hire people more readily by reducing the regulation of employment, by making the first 3 employees free of all regulation. The 26 million small businesses in the country will start hiring. We can create 20 million jobs overnight if we deregulate, at least as to the first 3 employees. So that's the program of economic reform in the country is going to eliminate the other things that the other candidates have said, and I agree with what they've said. Thank you.
That concludes the opening remarks, and we will now go to questions from the panelists. We will start with Mr. Governor Johnson as the first question, and Brett, take it away.
Governor Johnson, what is your position on tax reform?
Well, I advocate for throwing out, and one of the 3 promises that I'm making as President of the United States, I'm promising to advocate on the part of throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with a fair tax. For those of you that haven't checked it out, I would ask you to do that, fairtax.org. But what you're going to do is do away with income tax, you're going to do away with corporate tax, you're going to do away with withholdings, you're going to do away with the IRS. It replaces it with a 23% consumption tax, which over a very short amount of time should be cost neutral. So it's really the answer when it comes to our exports being competitive with our exports costing 23% less. And it's really the answer when it comes to jobs. If in a zero corporate tax rate environment, the private sector does not create tens of millions of jobs, I don't know under what scenario you would have tens of millions of jobs created. I really think that it reboots the American economy for the next 100 years.
Mr. Lee Wrights?
What you said we can do to reform taxes in this country is get rid of most of them. We're taxing people to death. That's why they can't sustain a small business in this country anymore. It costs so much in regulations to do it, and then have the tax burden heaped on top of it. There's no way for them to make money and to prosper. Only the big companies can afford to do business in America anymore because of this. Greatest thing we can do in tax reform is reduce the regulations. I agree we should do away with the income tax and replace it with nothing. I'm reminded of what Thomas Sowell said. You put out a forest fire, what do you replace it with? Nothing.
Mr. Leroy Saunders?
I don't ever recall a time during any of America's prosperity and economic growth with the corporate tax rate at 0 or capital gains at 0. People act as if there are no more millionaires and billionaires, you can't make it anymore. It's funny how when regular Americans ask for a break, we call them socialists, they're begging. But Wall Street can ask, give me tax breaks, give me this, give me less regulation. When Steve Jobs was asked, how can you bring jobs back to China, he said nothing. He didn't say regulation, he didn't say lower my taxes. He said there's nothing we can do. When Electrolyte moved their companies to Mexico, Governor Jennifer Granholm offered to give them 0 taxes for 20 years. And he still moved because he told her, there's nothing you can do that can compensate for the fact that it's going to cost me $1.50 per day. What we need to do is reduce the tax rate to 18% for all Americans. That increase GDP. That's what small business owners want. More Americans with more money in their pocket walking into their stores. Small businesses start to grow and the economy grows.
Unfortunately, Apple products are made by Chinese slave labor. There's a very interesting report that just came across on the internet about all that today. Again, you can't run a government on nothing. You have to have some type of a tax structure. What Carl Denninger and I have proposed is that by reasonable cuts, we can use only a consumption tax for our tax revenue of about 18.8%. And that's what I favor. I don't necessarily favor the fair tax because I haven't studied it in depth. I just call it a consumption tax of some sort.
There are a lot of tax subsidies, the oil depletion allowance and the agricultural subsidies, and there are probably hundreds or thousands of bills that have passed where people are getting reductions in taxes that are not applied to everyone. So I think, first of all, we have to go through and just eliminate all of that favored tax policy. And that's a beginning. And then we have to go through and really cut out so much of this regulation and really simplify the tax structure. I don't know how to do it. I wish I did, but I know that we have too many people benefiting with tax exemptions and the rest of us pay the price. So I'm not sure what the real solution is after we cut out the unfairness.
Yes, the very concept, the foundation underneath the personal income tax is unconstitutional because it assumes that the government owns us through owning our labor or the product of our labor. And for that reason, I think that it's totally unconstitutional, and I will not support it. Nor will I support any type of replacement of a personal income tax. I also don't support a consumption-based tax or a fair tax type of concept because I think it's not fair at all. I think once we hand that power over to Congress...